think we can all agree that there has to be a powerful deck in every format. There has to be a top tier. Whether or not that's tier 0 or tier 1 is a whole different discussion, the differences between them, but there are cards that are inherently broken in every format, but many of them are supplemented by support cards. And in today's video, I wanted to go over a deck that's been getting a lot of limelight, a lot of time in it, and the support card around it, specifically Agatha's Soul Cauldron. This weekend, the discussion has been around VV Ornithir, and I think in many ways something will happen to that card, but I think in some ways the actual problematic card is the support card behind it. And I wanted to take a look at some of the ways that different formats are actually taking use of this card. Now, over the past weekend here, we had the Arena Championship, and it really the talk of the town is it Cauldron, right? That is the most played deck in Standard right now, showcasing the power of Agatha's Soul Cauldron and VV Ornithir. You'll see the top 8 deck list is 7 Cauldron decks and 1 Temur Ferocious deck. The top 4 just ends up being Cauldrons. The mirror ends up being Cauldron here. And so a lot of Standard players, a lot of constructed players are frustrated with not only the situation at hand when it comes to Standard, but also in relation to this, the pricing of all of this. Because if a Final Fantasy card, a Mythic notably, is going to be at the top of the metagame, that means the price is going to be astronomically high considering the sealed prices of the product itself. So there's a multifaceted discussion to be had there, but some of the points I don't want to expand on too much because they're not the point of this video. For now, we have a recent video that just came out as of the recording of this video that there might be a VV problem in Standard. Shout out to this screen grab that I have of the most bewildered look off of Seth's face here, but his video is important to watch. Go ahead and watch it. It's about VV specifically, and I think it highlights a lot of things in terms of the design of VV over time. There's a lot of cool things happening here. Again, today's video, I wanted to focus on Agatha's Soul Cauldron, which I think is the real problem, and not necessarily just advocating for that card's ban in Standard for a couple of different reasons, but also showcasing why the card is powerful in many other formats and how it's being used in those formats to then highlight why this might just be an eternally powerful card that Wizards of the Coast may not have been prepared for in the Standard environment, especially one that is now longer, has 3 years of non-rotation. But for now, Standard is dominated by largely kind of 4 archetypes, right? So you have Control, you have Azorius Control. This is the deck that I'm personally playing. You have the Cauldron decks, and you have Prowess. Both of these are kind of go large decks. VV is the kind of crux of them. And so again, you can argue, yes, VV should be the ban if you were to make a Standard ban tomorrow. But again, I think it's actually Cauldron here. Dimir midrange and Esper self bounce. Many of these decks, especially Alpha Esper self bounce, is really helmed by the new Cosmogrand Zenith as a new bounce target. And Dimir midrange is just doing crazy broken things as well. A bunch of like middling flyers in the air alongside Kaido and a control package is powerful alongside aggro variants at the bottom here. So Standard has a good variety. It does actually. At the top though, that's where you get a problem with a fifth of the metagame being is it Cauldron, the other fifth being Dimir midrange. There's a lot of homogeneity at the top, and so that becomes the argument of how varied Standard actually is. And so when it comes to the support packages of all these cards, there actually is a lot of recent innovation. And so you have to give thanks to some of the more recent sets and some of the more pushed rares and mythics that come out of them. They do actually make a difference and they do lead to new decks. So that's kind of nice. It's not like one set from 5 sets ago is continuously the dominant set. There are support cards from everywhere. And you can say that about Standard currently, especially with Esper self bounce coming back with Cosmogrand Zenith. We know that Storm Chaser's Challenge has been a powerful Magic card for a while. It's nice to see Cosmogrand Zenith breathe back new life in a deck that likes to just play a bunch of small creatures and enable something like that. But when it comes to Agatha's Soul Cauldron, VV's biggest weakness is that it dies without doing anything, right? Like, so it's one that checks the removal idea, right? So does it die to removal? Yes, there's no inherent protection around it. It doesn't have ward on your turn. It doesn't have hexproof inherently. And we have a ton of those. The problem is that Agatha's Soul Cauldron turns VV's biggest weakness into a strength because you want it in the graveyard. And so a lot of people will say, oh, just play Graveyard Hate. I myself, as a blue-white control player, am playing some number of Rest in Pieces in my sideboard. The problem with this becomes that Agatha's Soul Cauldron is the graveyard hate. You do understand that Agatha's Soul Cauldron targets a card in a graveyard. There are formats where Agatha's Soul Cauldron in the main board can act as specific graveyard hate, because the powerful thing to do in those formats is actually hyper power out one threat instead of a whole threat. It's not about dredge decks going about a critical mass of creatures to come out or a critical mass of spells to be cast to the graveyard. It's more powerful to just power out a Troll of Khazad-dûm or something like an Atraxa. And so specific targeted removals such as Agatha's Soul Cauldron and Ghost Vacuum actually serve a lot of power, because they are not only part of your main board combo, but they can also stop your opponent's combo. Now, in a world of mirrors, having your VV hit the graveyard is very tricky, because as the person who puts the card into the graveyard, pretty much as the minute it's there, you can't do anything with it, because as soon as you activate your Cauldron to put the VV under there, your opponent can then activate their Cauldron to put the VV under their own Cauldron. And so there are many situations where graveyard hate is too late. It does not matter. The card is already exiled under the Agatha's Soul Cauldron, and the combo is already at hand. If you have ways to put 1/1 counters onto things, boost things up, then those cards are going to be just kind of retroactively powered up by the Agatha's Soul Cauldron. So arguably, it's not even just VV is the problem, because VV is powering up certain strategies. It is available to the standard players in the prowess strategy. But when it comes to the Cauldron deck, we should see that the problem is Agatha's Soul Cauldron. And again, I want to highlight this in today's video by showcasing it in different formats. And also, it's not necessarily showcasing that this should be banned in every format, but just highlighting how a powerful card out of Wilds of Eldraine is making a big impact, even in some small ways, in all formats that it is legal in. Notably, I'm not going to be going over Commander. There's like a billion ways that you can combo off with this in Commander. There's so many ways that you can go infinite with it. I don't need to go over those in Commander. Y'all can watch my short form content for that, right? Agatha's Soul Cauldron, 2 mana for a legendary artifact that says you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate abilities of creatures you control. Okay, so immediately it lets you just take activated abilities, play them in any way, shape, or form. So if you are running a mono black deck, you have Agatha's Soul Cauldron out, you can immediately take your mono black card that has like white in its activation cost or red or whatever, I don't know, some random thing like that, and Agatha's Soul Cauldron lets you use it without using any of the other text. The card has some interesting abilities there. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have all activated abilities of creature cards exiled with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. So this is where we start to get things really interesting. Now, without reading the last line of text, with the 1/1 counters on certain creatures, so if you have cards that just enter with a creature or another choice, you may choose to put a creature on it or a 1/1 counter on it so that it gets abilities underneath Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Or if you just have effects that give 1/1 counters, it can immediately hyper power up the Agatha's Soul Cauldron. The last ability says tap, exile target card from a graveyard. A graveyard, as I mentioned, it is main board graveyard hate. It's hard to justify playing graveyard hate against this deck when it has that anyway. It has that anyway. It will exile the VV, and at that point, the graveyard hate, the Ghost Vacuum, the Rest in Peace, whatever that you draw after does not mean anything anymore, right? Now you have to ignore all of that. You're probably, with your discard effects, your draw discard effects, you will be discarding your Rest in Pieces and now trying to find your enchantment hate, your artifact hate, your board wipes to get rid of the creatures, all that stuff. Exile target card from a graveyard. Whenever a creature card is exiled this way, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. So it can't be something your opponent does. So this doesn't have any group hug elements in something like Commander. It has to be something you control. And there are a lot of creatures, especially in older formats, Modern, Legacy, and all that stuff, that come in with 1/1 counters anyway, but also have a lot of value in terms of the activated abilities that you can put onto things. Now, notably, what's going on here is that especially when it comes to something like VV, if we kind of back up here, VV says whenever you you add this activated abilities, pay 0, add X mana of any combination of blue or red, where X is the card's power, activate only during your turn and only once per turn. So that notably is the balanced part of it. They at least put that condition on the activated ability itself, so it brings it across to the other creatures that are already there. You are going to be able to generate crazy amounts of mana by putting it onto other creatures that you already have in the deck. but you also are going to get an inherent win condition in your VVs in terms of making them super strong. If you have a VV in the graveyard, you can draw your way into another VV, generate a bunch of mana, deal damage to your opponent. There are plenty of ways to find wins in this deck through haste enablers, through attacking big. There's ways to win with Agatha's Soul Cauldron in Standard. So Agatha's does a lot. Hyperpower's activated abilities, provides like this cool anthem effect for anything that comes in with the 1/1 counter, and acts as mainboard graveyard hate that can add combo potential to it. This card is absolutely insane. And I mean, in terms of price, if I can like just showcase it here, if I just back up just a little bit here. Yeah, so this card like spiked big, right? Like, so it was kind of coming down over time, you know, 25 bucks, everything. It went up to about 40, 30 to 40 and everything. And now it's spiked up big again, right? And so this is because of VV more recently, right? So big spike is now like 70 bucks on average. And this one especially hurt for me. Buying into Paper Legacy, I am, of course, a mill player. Of course, I'm going to play into Painter, and the primary way to play Painter currently is with Agatha's Soul Cauldron in it, which we're going to go over in a second. So Agatha's Soul Cauldron in many ways is powerful in Standard. How does it work in other formats? Well, again, in Standard, very simple here. Really what you're trying to do is put VV into your graveyard to then hyperpower cards like Tursa, Steam Core Caller, Fear of Missing Out, Draconaut Engineer, Marauding Mako that will come in with more 1/1 counters in it. And so different cards that have activated abilities. So the Draconautics, notably, you can create 4/4 dragon dinosaurs, and you can also have other creatures you control gain haste. So again, you don't have to win with just casting a bunch of things with VV. You can just make a massive board, put a Draconautic Engineer into your graveyard, and then give your other creatures haste, or you could just play it. It's pretty cheap. 2 mana, activate for 1. All your creatures gain haste is pretty damn good. And then extra attack phases with something like Fear of Missing Out in a deck that wants to feed out its graveyard. It's not going to be hard to enable something like Delirium, especially with, instants, various instants, and their sorceries are in there, creatures, artifacts, enchantments, lands. There's plenty of ways to get types into your graveyard. This is it Cauldron out of Standard? When it comes to Pioneer itself looks to use this in maybe not the most powerful way possible, but looks to use this with something like Insidious Roots. Insidious Roots says creature tokens you have tap, add 1 mana of any color. But the key is whenever 1 or more creature cards leave your graveyard, so whether it be through exile, through reanimation, it just leaves the graveyard into another zone. Create a 0/1 green plant creature token, then put a 1/1 counter on each plant you control. And so if you do this over and over again in a turn, you can start to imagine how these plant tokens start to get really, really big. And they enter with the 1/1 counter. Now, notably, it's just the plant tokens. It's not all creatures get +1/+1. The deck might be a little too good if that's what it did. For now, Agatha's Soul Cauldron serves as the whole goddamn price of the deck alongside Beseiju. But when it comes to that, not only does it exile a creature to get it out of there and then triggers the Insidious Root, then you create a plant creature token, adds a 1/1, and it'll get the activated abilities of that. Notably, Tyvar, you're not going to be getting those activated abilities of. It's not Grist, which we're going to talk about for Modern's sake in a second. But you do get the abilities of milling 3 cards and returning a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Great. You can also get the various activated abilities of something like Priest of the Forgotten God. Bloodghast is a really sweet creature to have like re-enter over and over again and trigger the Insidious Root to different sack outlets when this creature enters, mill 3 cards. And so you're just going to be making a whole bunch of, big board. And then you're even with something like Molt Tender, you can make up big. So this is an example of how Agatha's Soul Cauldron takes advantage of graveyard hate synergies or graveyard synergies in the Pioneer format to make a go-wide deck that can come in for an attack. Not necessarily a combo deck, but one that has value and one that has graveyard hate in a format that honestly doesn't really care about it, but there are scenarios where the graveyard hate will matter. Right? There are matchups for it. Yes, the majority of the Pioneer format is taken up by red mice at this point. And so, something like Agatha's Soul Cauldron is going to be the most important there. But again, a card that is going to be able to steal your opponent's activated abilities in their creatures while also enabling yours, something like Insidious Roots is going to be important to making sure your board goes wide. Notably, I should remind y'all, it triggers only when a creature leaves your graveyard, not your opponent. So, be aware of that when you're attacking your opponent with the Agatha's Soul Cauldron. When it comes to the modern format, you have a more combo aspect, like a more combo-y route with Agatha Soul Cauldron. So again, you have Soul Cauldron as a 4 of, and the key to this is you have 2 cards that you're really looking to abuse. There's a couple more. I will highlight them. But first of all, Grist the Hunger Tide. Grist the Hunger Tide is a creature in every zone but the battlefield. Every zone but the battlefield. You cannot negate this card on the stack. It is a creature on the stack. But in the graveyard, it is a creature. So if you hit this with Agatha Soul Cauldron, you can now put a Planeswalker's abilities onto your creature. Absolutely insane. In terms of mid-range value, absolutely diabolically insane. This is a crazy interaction, right? And is one of the more powerful interactions in Magic today, in my opinion. The second piece is Agatha Soul Cauldron taking Yawgmoth out of your graveyard. This is where you get to like quote unquote infinite loops. So Yawgmoth has 2 activated abilities: pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature, put a -1/-1 counter up to 1 target creature you control, and draw a card. So you can pay life ad nauseum, pun intended here. As long as you have another creature to sacrifice, you put a 1/1 counter, -1/-1 counter onto something and draw a card. The way you want to loop this is ideally with like 2 Young Wolves or just 2 cards with some level of Undying. So what happens is when this creature dies, you sacrifice it, it returns the 1/1 counter on it. It's now a 2/2. What you then do is with 2 of these out, you sacrifice 1 to put a -1/-1 counter onto another, and then you draw a card. At like the cost of 1 life, you're just going to draw a card. And that's what Agatha Soul Cauldron does. With every creature that comes back with the 1/1 counter, Young Wolf comes back with the 1/1 counter, it will gain the activated abilities of everything in the graveyard. So if you put a Grist under there, you put a Yawgmoth under there, you can add the Grist ability to mill out your graveyard or, sacrifice a creature and then destroy something else. You can do the mid-range stuff. Then you can continue to combo out. Then at some point, if you have some ability that lets you gain a life, right? So if you have a Blood Artist effect, whenever a creature dies, you gain 1 life, your opponent loses 1 life. Now you're not actually losing a life to draw a card. You are just sacking a creature for free in a loop to just draw a card and drain your opponent out. So this is, again, a more combo aspect to a deck like this. It is one that requires a little bit of setup, but it is the truest form of Aristocrats, in my opinion, in Modern at a competitive level. And Agatha Soul Cauldron is the key behind it. This deck can go the mid-range plan. It can just attack you. It can outvalue you in the long game with something like Grist, and then just kind of ramp out with something like Wall of Roots and stuff like that. Notably, this specific version that I'm highlighting, I wanted to do so because it's kind of funny because it has 4 Urza Saga and he's using Blade of the Bloodsheaf and Basking Broodscale. So it's kind of like a hybrid. I don't know if all of the Yawgmoth decks are doing this, but again, the Yawgmoth core is some amount of Young Wolves, Agatha Soul Cauldron, Grist the Hunger Tide, Yawgmoth. You likely have Delighted Halfling in there as well. You have some amount of Wall of Roots as well, because this is a great activated ability to put on all your creatures to have them just generate mana. Again, a lot of powerful things that you can do in this deck in an Aristocrat style deck. So we can see how Agatha Soul Cauldron starts to really shine in many places, where in Standard, it acts as a go wide aggro tool to take a combo piece, create a large board, or kind of ping your opponent out of nowhere. In something like Pioneer, it has applications where it can create a go wide combo-esque strategy, maybe just like a high value synergy that creates a wide board. And again, still in both those situations, acts as main board graveyard hate. And finally, in Modern, you have an Aristocrats strategy that has a lot of mid-range value, but again, a combo finish that is off the back of Agatha Soul Cauldron, continuing to have a lot of similar effects in all formats that it is available in. In Legacy, this is the paper deck that I have. This is actually this is my favorite deck in Legacy by far. It's not Oops All Spells based on the amount of content on it on the channel. It actually is Painter. And Agatha Soul Cauldron serves as the most recent innovation of this deck. And the reason is, not only being graveyard hate is highly important in a Legacy metagame right now where Reanimator is at the top. There's a lot of graveyard synergies, a lot of powerful activated abilities running around in the format here and there. Agatha Soul Cauldron acts as a great piece of point hate, which is important there. But also, Agatha Soul Cauldron acts as not only a win condition, but as a way to find your combo, right? And that's the key to it. So Agatha Soul Cauldron doesn't necessarily serve as the combo win. The combo win in this deck is going to be something like Grindstone, pay 3, target player mills 2 cards. If those 2 cards share a color, repeat this process. You play something like Painter's Servant. Painter's Servant, you have it enter and you pick any color. Most of the time, you're going to be picking blue, and then you activate your Grindstone and your opponent mills out their whole deck. They untap, they draw, and they lose the game. That is your combo finish. Neither of those are creatures that also have activated abilities. You have a creature, doesn't have an activated ability. You have an activated ability, not a creature. So Agatha Soul Cauldron is not working with the primary combo. Here, though, Agatha Soul Cauldron is working with 2 things. Or 3 things, I should say. 2 of the cards are going to come together into one category. Goblin Welder and Goblin Engineer. They serve as ways to go about your artifact mid-range plan. So there's a lot of recursion in this deck. There's a lot of times that artifacts will enter the graveyard. So Goblin Engineer, specifically when it enters, goes into your deck and tutors for an artifact and puts it into the graveyard. Then what it can do is tap, sack, return target artifact from graveyard with converted mana cost 3 or less. But the key is, even without that ability, you can activate Agatha Soul Cauldron if the Goblin Engineer dies or it gets milled over or whatever. And then you can give your creatures, such as your Painter's Servant, your Goblin Welder, or your tokens off of Fable of the Mirror Breaker, these abilities when you put a 1/1 counter on them. But then you can put something like Phyrexian Devourer into the graveyard. Phyrexian Devourer says if Devourer's power is greater than 7, you destroy it. But that's not part of its activated ability. That's its static text. Its activated ability says remove the top card of your library, exile the top card of your library, and put +X counters on this creature where X is equal to that power's converted mana cost. And so you can see how now, with something like Agatha Soul Cauldron, every single creature you have can quote unquote infinitely, not infinitely, it's the amount of cards left in your deck, exile cards on the top of their library, make it big and attack in. It doesn't have the Phyrexian Devourer static text and can go in with combat. So Agatha Soul Cauldron exists as mainboard graveyard hate in a format where Dimir Reanimator is very popular, but also serves as a near combo win condition through combat in something like Phyrexian Devourer, while also providing you mid-range capabilities in copying Goblin Engineer and Goblin Welder's effect. Very similar effects, not exactly, but similar effects in providing your creatures an out to continue to combo, continue to find value, and continue to gain cards and advantage at incremental points in the game. Agatha Soul Cauldron continues to do everything in all of the formats that we just mentioned. Agatha Soul Cauldron is actually just an insanely powerful Magic card in many ways, shape, and form. The last thing I want to mention, I don't have the best knowledge of this, but I thought it was kind of cool that in Vintage, in Shop specifically, so any Shops deck, for those of you that don't know, in Vintage, is defined by a 4 of Mishra's Workshop, a card that honestly should have just been restricted so long ago. There's so many cards on the banned and restricted list in Vintage that are only restricted and banned because Mishra's Workshop is a playset card. Mishra's Workshop is a land that is a Black Lotus. The key is that it's not a Lotus that gives you color, it gives you colorless mana, and you can only spend that colorless mana to cast artifact spells. Honestly, not even a restriction. It's really not even a restriction. It is just a hold my beer type of statement. For Mishra's Workshops, you are then casting, an artifact heavy deck. You're playing Black Lotuses, Vexing Baubles, Soul Rings, whatever. You're playing Agatha Soul Cauldron in this version of Shops. And then you are copying activated abilities of things like Walking Ballista. So if you're generating a ton of mana, then you can put 1/1 counters onto things. You are taking effects like Zabaz, so gain flying, destroy target artifact, all that stuff. And so you're using abilities like that to hyperpower your creatures and or your threats, while also having a prison package in things like Trinisphere, Thorn of the Amethyst, Sphere of Resistance, all that stuff, playing Strip Mines and Wastelands. Like, you're playing a prison deck, then using Agatha Soul Cauldron as graveyard hate in a format that does have a lot of powerful graveyard strength. Dredge is a top deck in the format. And that's something that Agatha Soul Cauldron is notably going to struggle against, because Dredge, generally speaking, is going to be putting a lot of cards into the graveyard at once, which is why, obviously, in the Vintage format, you will largely be seeing like 4 Leyline of the Voids as a common sideboard option against something like Dredge. So that's going to exist in the main board. Agatha Soul Cauldron is going to help with that, taking activated abilities, but also working alongside the prison aspect of it. Again, Agatha Soul Cauldron. I wanted to highlight the art from Jason Eagle here, or Engel, I should say. Beautiful art. Is one of the most powerful cards printed in recent memory in Magic. It's up there. It's not top 10, probably not even top 20 or 30. Has to be in the top 100 discussion. I think Agatha Soul Cauldron is the backbone of so many key combo and or mid-range plans in every single format that it's legal in. Ignoring Commander because there's so many ways to go infinite there. If you're playing Agatha Soul Cauldron, you are probably trying to combo with it when it comes to Commander. Agatha Soul Cauldron deserves to be highlighted as such, but notably in Standard should likely be the one to go. Now, you could argue again that Vivi should be the one to go, and that's fair. My experience with Standard is more limited. I started playing before Final Fantasy, just before, about a month or two before. And so my experience with the power of this card is very limited in that sense in Standard, but I see how it evolves in a little bit now so in Pioneer as I've started playing it, but in Modern and Legacy, I see where this card truly shines. And it does a lot. And I don't know if a card like this should be in Standard because I don't think Wizards of the Coast really planned for how powerful this card has ended up being in that format, and probably should be the one to go. I hope you've learned something in this video at least. Again, I wanted to use this as a highlight video for something like Agatha Soul Cauldron to show you what it's doing in all formats. You will see a lot of news about what it's doing in Standard right now, but it's also doing a bunch of crazy crap in all formats. In those formats, should it be banned? Probably not. It's a really powerful card. It's nowhere close to being banned in Legacy. It's a really cool, powerful mid-range piece. Nowhere close to that in Modern, at least, especially in Pioneer. But in Standard, it's likely a little overtuned. The type of synergies it has and the ways you answer it, Agatha Soul Cauldron in many ways can beat it. And if you beat Agatha Soul Cauldron, if you go to remove it, you're kind of having to worry about the rest of the deck as well. It's really a well-oiled machine, and I'm not sure if that format is ready to handle it. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. How do you feel about Agatha Soul Cauldron? What's your favorite interaction with Agatha Soul Cauldron? If you have one, I would love to actually highlight it. So definitely, I've been looking through and been better with looking through a lot of the comments in my more recent videos and interacting with a lot of you more. I'm stuttering at this point. I'm speaking before I'm thinking here. But please, if you have a favorite interaction, I would love to highlight it. It's really just me learning more. And hey, who knows? I might just steal your idea and put it into a short. I will do my best to at least shout you out if I do that. Regardless, let me know what you think about Agatha and her Soul Cauldron and how powerful it is in Magic the Gathering.